Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar. My name is Charlotte and I'll be monitoring the chat and helping if you have any technical issues throughout. Today we'll be focusing on updating to VertiGIS from Geocortex, and your host for today will be Chris Wright. I'll hand over to him shortly. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. You have all been placed on mute, however we welcome your comments and questions by typing these into the question panel. We will address these at the end of today's webinar in the Q&A session. If we don't get a chance to answer your question, don't worry, we will follow up with you afterwards. Finally, today's webinar is being recorded and we will share the link with you after the webinar via email. Okay, over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Charlotte. Good morning, everybody. As Charlotte mentioned, my name's Chris Wright and I'm a managing consultant here at One Spatial with a focus on the VertiGIS suite of software, and I head up the VertiGIS practice. And today I'm going to be talking about the migration to VertiGIS Studio from Geocortex Essentials. Just a short introduction about One Spatial. As most of you probably are aware, we are a worldwide company, our head office being in the UK, but we do have offices in Australia, Tunisia and America. And we work with an awful lot of people, helping them make better use of their geospatial data. And on the right-hand side here, you can see that we're in government verticals, utility verticals and transport verticals. And we've been working with VertiGIS since about 2010, with our first sale being in 2011 to Lambeth Borough Council. So why am I talking to you today? What are we all talking about? Well, Esri have announced that they're going to retire the JavaScript 3 API in July 2024. So what does that mean? Well, by retirement, they mean they're not going to do any more fixes if it gets broken. VertiGIS have said that they'll support Geocortex Essentials until the end of 2028. However, some of your apps may stop working during this period, and I'll give you an idea of why. Let's say worst case scenario. In July 2024, Esri retire and stop maintaining and supporting JavaScript 3. In August 2024, one of the browsers, Chrome, Edge or Firefox, make a breaking change which breaks the JavaScript 3 API. Esri are not going to fix that, and consequently, if Esri don't fix that, VertiGIS won't be able to make a fix with inside the Essentials environment and the HTML5 viewer. So the HTML5 viewer may stop working or may have erratic behavior that VertiGIS have no control over. They just can't get it fixed. So that it is important, and we do need to worry about it. The likelihood of that happening is pretty remote, but that's probably worst case scenario that I've highlighted there. It may work until 2028. Esri have also announced that they're going to retire Web App Builder in 2025. So any Web App Builder applications you have, you'll need to think about migrating those as well. So now is the time to start thinking about the transition between Geocortex and VertiGIS Studio. And to be honest, doing nothing is not a sensible option here, because at some point it's going to retire or it's going to break. So what do you need to consider? What have you got to think about? So these are some thoughts that I've been putting together, and they're on our website. I wrote a blog about this, but you need to start thinking about, do I need named user licenses? VertiGIS Studio works with either an enterprise portal or ArcGIS Online, and therefore by implication relies on Esri named user licenses. If you don't have these, you need to think about obtaining them from your Esri supplier, because that's how we go forward with the VertiGIS Studio. Everything is stored in portal or online as items, as you'll see later. Do you have any bespoke code that you've developed? Do you have any code blocks that you load up? I don't think One Spatial have written any code blocks for customers, but I do know customers that have written their own code that they use inside the Essentials and the HTML5 viewer. You need to think about how you're going to upgrade that. How many Essentials workflows do you have, and how complex are they? Here at One Spatial, what we tend to do is we call it t-shirt sizing. So we have small, medium and large. Small being a couple of days worth of effort, medium being 5 days worth of effort, and maybe large being 10 days or over. So you need to try and give yourself an idea of how many workflows you've got and how complex they are, because you need to rewrite them in VertiGIS Studio workflow. And the same goes for any print templates you have and any report templates you have. You need to consider these. And also with your sites, you need to consider how many essential sites you have and how complex are they. Now, one of the things you can do is with the HTML5 viewer, you can add a button in, and if you email us, we can explain where it is. But you can add a button in that allows you to export your viewer template to ArcGIS Online or Portal. So you create an Esri web map automatically out of what you've got. Also, do you need to take any training on the VertiGIS Studio product suite? Workflow, printing, reporting, VertiGIS Studio Web, they're all new products. So you may need to think about training. Now, we do offer lots of different types or ways of doing the training. We can offer you hosted training. So we'll put a trainer up and we'll train your students. One of the most popular ways at the moment that people are doing is there's also self-paced training courses. Most of the courses are 2 days in length. And with a self-paced course, you get 5 days. So starting from a Monday, you get 5 days to do the 2-day course. That's favourable by people because it means you're not taking the whole 2 days out in one go and you can still do work around it. In that scenario, staff from One Spatial and my team will be available to answer any questions that you have. When should you start the move? Well, I suggest you start thinking about it now and you start building your VertiGIS Studio apps so that you can get there before it becomes a problem. So another question is, should I use software as a service or on-premise installations? They both have merit and they both have good considerations. The one thing I would say is that if you have printing solutions, then the printing option should be on-premise as it works with Enterprise Portal. For SaaS printing, it only works with ArcGIS Online at present. And I guess one of the questions you're all sitting there asking now, and it's a question that you need to ask, is why should I continue to use VertiGIS? What's in it for me? Well, if you remember back, you might have seen this diagram before. Experience Builder give you out of the box apps and they give you configurable apps. But if you want to do something more complicated, you then start developing. And developing in those applications can be time consuming and can take a long time. And that's what we call the custom development gap, in order to take something that's finished a template and you want to add to it. VertiGIS greatly reduces that time gap and can really rapidly produce your applications. You can get things working very, very quickly and very, very easily with just drag and drop technology, as you'll see. So let's take our whole Esri stack, and we have either an ArcGIS Online or an ArcGIS Enterprise. And we have creators for those applications. And creators create 2D web maps or 3D scenes. We then have some viewer frameworks, which include Experience Builder, Web App Builder, as I've already talked about, VertiGIS Studio Web and VertiGIS Studio Mobile. Mobile is a new application that's specific for taking data offline and working in an offline mode, and then coming back and syncing any edits you may have made back into the main database. The creators have access to these viewer frameworks, and they can create applications that consume web maps and web scenes and store them as apps inside ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. There's also a suite of capabilities which include VertiGIS Studio Printing, VertiGIS Studio Workflow, VertiGIS Studio Reporting, and VertiGIS Studio Inline. Creators also have access to these applications or these templates, and they can design workflows, design print templates, These get stored as VertiGIS Studio items, as I mentioned before, which then can be added to the applications, which can then be shared amongst your users, be they in the office, be they in the field, or be they a mixture of, or even working from home. And then when you're sharing the data to your users, you really want to restrict who can see what, where, and when, especially if you've got external contractors that work with you. And there we have a product called VertiGIS Studio Access Control. Access control gives you fine-grained control over who sees what, where, and when, right down to attribute level on particular classes. You can also have a spatial extent that you can restrict view to. So, for example, if you have external contractors, you could create a spatial extent for them, and the contractor could only see the data that's inside that spatial extent. And you can go, you can create a donut so they can see the donut, but not the whole. So it's a very, very powerful way of controlling access to the data. And then sitting over the top, there's a product called VertiGIS Studio Analytics. And analytics gives you the ability to understand who's doing what, where, and when with your applications, what services are performing slowly in terms of the map resources, what CPUs are being hit quite hard, what disks are being hit quite hard. If you have databases, what the database performance is like. And it can give you analytics reports on all of those things. You can set up alerts so that if something starts to go wrong, CPUs are maxed out, etc., you can set it to send emails to your IT department, for example. And then you can have dashboards where senior management can see the performance of the applications and what's being used and what's not, and where they should focus their efforts. So on the left-hand side there, we have what Geocortex Essentials was. It was a feature-rich, all-in-one viewer framework. What's happened now is that the products have been unbundled, enabling you to deliver more powerful apps with the viewer frameworks. Also, some of the things you can do are things like workflow. You can add to Experience Builder, so you could create a VertiGIS Studio workflow and have it working in Experience Builder. Same with the print templates and report templates. So it's the workflows that you build can be shareable across your Esri estate. This is just a bit of a comparison of the main components of Essentials and where they are within VertiGIS Studio. So when they've built the new stuff, normally they surpass the functionality. In most cases, it's at least equivalent, but they surpass the functionality. With collaboration, this is the one thing that's changed a little bit. What we're going to do is use VertiGIS Studio Web and Microsoft Teams to have the same look and feel as collaboration might. So essentially what you've got is you've got Geocortex Essentials and you've got new VertiGIS Studio. VertiGIS Studio is almost everything that's in Essentials but more. So you've got software as a service, you've got better device integration, you've got multi-monitor support for 3D. There's a new dev test prod app development, which I'll show you, which is really, really powerful. Multiple map support, so 2D and 3D. And you can also add new different designers and new different layouts, and you'll see that as well. VertiGIS Studio also links with all these other business systems. So from one spatial point of view, it links with one integrate. A lot of you might know FME, it links with FME. So you can build and call FME workbenches from a VertiGIS Studio workflow. So what strategy should you apply for doing your migration? So I think the phase one is to plan. So it's to get an inventory of your workflows, your print templates, your sites. Assess what you want to do with them. Learn about the new products and maybe explore the software as a service. And then start to act. Start rewriting reports, print templates and workflows. Export your site to a web map using the tools I mentioned earlier. And then configure and deploy your apps using the new deployment mechanism. And then you'll be able to evolve them further with continuous improvement and gathering feedback from your users. And then obviously you'll reap the rewards with this going forward. So what can you do next? So you can talk to your One Spatial account manager. We can help you through the process. I've got a dedicated team that can work with you. We can help you understand the size of the workload and what might be required. And then you can decide whether you'd like to do it yourselves, whether you'd like us to help you, or whether you'd like us to do it all for you. And all those options are available. We just would like to work with you to get it right. Okay, so time for a demonstration. I'll just minimize that there and I'll bring up. This is the VertiGIS Studio Web Designer. So this would be the equivalent of your Essentials Manager. So you can see that I've designed something or tried to design something that looks a bit like the HTML5 viewer layout. And that's with the HTML5 viewer layout. It's quite flexible in what you can do. So these are my home tabs here, and I've got my home tabs over here. If I click on my home tabs, you can see that I've got a bunch of things that I can do with them. So I've got a horizontal orientation, so that's along the top, and at the moment the tabs position is at the start. If I was to change the tabs position to be at the end, then what actually happens is these tabs will move now and they'll be at the bottom. So it's very easy to change the layout of where you want things to be and how you want it to look and feel. And of course you could have this whole home page over on the right hand side if you wanted, or at the bottom if you wanted. It's up to you to how you want to design it. Traditionally, the HTML5 viewers had the same look and feel for everybody. With the new web layout, the same look and feel does not have to follow through. You can really design what you want and how you want it to look. If I just go back a little bit, I'll just show another version of that. So inside my map window, this is my map window here. I've got the I want to menu, the fantastic I want to menu, and at the moment its slot is at the top start. So let's say I want to put it at top center. That will move it to the center of the map at the top. So again, very, very simple to move and change these things. And you also have a whole suite of components that you can add in to your site. So you have a map area, address, base map picker, geometry toolbar, Google Street Viewing, including 3D map toggle, map coordinates, all the good things, printing, scale bars. You have layout options, so the whole layout is based on rows and columns and panels that hold rows and columns. So you can build up how your site is going to look. And then there's other integrations. You can integrate, add a button, add charts, KPI cards, query builders, and you can add workflows in. So you can add workflows into your site that get kicked off when you press a button. And as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, there's a new deployment mechanism for this type of application, and it's here. So by default, you have a deploy to production. But what I can do is I can change that deployment strategy. And so the default is dev to prod. I then have dev to test to prod, and then dev to test to staging to prod. So you can set up whatever deployment strategy you wish, and you can use the same environment for everything. So the same portal, or as some of our customers have, they have 3 or 4 separate portals. So they might have a dev portal, a test portal, and a production portal. You can specify an environment. So you can specify for my production environment, I'm going to specify a new web location, a new portal URL, and an app ID that you need to deploy. And then when it publishes, it will take the whole application, workflows, print templates, and everything, and deploy it to the new portal. Automatically, you don't have to write scripts, you don't have to copy files. And as part of that process, you can also set up environment variables where you might have a URL which is dev.camel050 that then moves to prod.camel050. So you just set up that environment variable here, and then when you deploy, that'll automatically happen, and the new URLs throughout the application will be honored and followed through. So that's the designer. So when you're happy with the designer, what you end up with is you get a URL that you can use and you can send out to your users. I've got the application open here. So this is what the application looks like. Excuse me a moment. Sorry about that, bit of a frog in my throat. So it looks, as I said, I've designed this to look a little bit like the HTML5 viewer, and you've got the standard things there. You've got a printing option, you've got a query tool. So if I click that, you can select any layer in the in your map, and then you can select any of the attributes within that layer, and then you can query those attributes. So the query tools there. You've got workflows here. So this is what I put all of my workflows underneath a workflows tab. You don't have to do that. You've got tools, looking for base maps, adding in layers, drawing tools to measure, to draw things on the map, to draw notes on the map, sharing the data with other people, uploading new layers, shape files, CSV files, Excel spreadsheets, and I've got a reset button here to reset any highlights on the map that I want. Workflows work in a similar way as before. So I've got my address search workflow here. So if I click on that, I've got start typing a postcode. So if I start typing ST16 2HE there, that's going to highlight a set of addresses. In this case, there's only one address. And then if I locate the address, it'll zoom me to that address, and I've decided to put a yellow dotted line around it with a black circle over that address. So that's a workflow that probably similar to a workflow you had in HTML5 that just queries an address layer and then comes up and gives you a set of results and drives you to it. So what does that workflow look like? So this is it here. So this is new workflow. So you can see I've got a display form here. With these display forms, you can have these different boxes. So the selecting address by default is hidden, is not visible. But as soon as I type something in here, then it highlights or it unhides the address list and allows you to select from the address. Something also very, very powerful within the new workflow is the term activity packs. And there's a whole series of activity packs that you can load in to workflow to get things to work. So, for example, there's a OneIntegrate integration, an FME integration, a Maximo integration, and they just appear at the bottom as a set of utilities that you can use. So here's the OneIntegrate ones. There's some for utility network here. There's FME integration, so you can check an FME status, etc., etc. So very, very powerful tool is workflow. If I now come back to here and I reset my results, my markers, and my search reset, and I switch over, what you'll notice here is there's a button in my home panel called Swap Layouts. Now what Swap Layouts allows me to do is to choose a different layout to make the map have a different look and feel. And there's a bunch of colored dots on the map here that you can probably see. This is a Freedom of Information Act that I did, and it's essentially crime data that I got for the Staffordshire area. So when I switch to my new layout, I'm going to be mainly looking at this crime data and focusing this layout on the crime data. So I'm going to go to my dashboard layout here. This takes a few moments to load. But essentially what it does is it filters all of the crime information that I've got for that area. I think there's 2,000 odd objects. And then it'll draw the map. And then what it's going to do is going to filter the results based on the drawn area that we've got. So you'll see that results number will drop now from 2,600 down to a more sensible number, 638. What it's then going to do is to put some KPI cards across the top, which represents the breakdown of crimes within that 638. So we'll just wait for a moment here while that draws that. And then what also will happen, so there we have the breakdown of the crimes, and then down the left-hand side we'll get a list where we can toggle on and off the crimes. But we're also going to add in now, we're going to split the screen in half, and we're going to add in some pie charts and bar charts that also represent the data. But as it's dynamic, you'll see that the results have changed. So all of these numbers up here will change accordingly. And then the bar charts will appear here, and the pie charts appear there. Now, if I hover over a piece of the pie on the crime type chart, these will now highlight on the map, as you can see there, and it'll show you where those occurrences are within the current screen. If I turn off shoplifting, it'll turn off, it'll come out of the pie here. It'll first go to 0 up here, and then it'll readjust the pie charts and the outcome charts to suit what I've just done. So I've taken some information away, so the pie charts automatically adjust. Turn it back on again, and it'll go back to where it was. So shoplifting will come back out. And as we mentioned earlier, there's also dual screening available. So what you could effectively do if you were in a call center would be to pop out this crime panel, or sorry, chart panel, and have that on one screen, and then you would have the map on another screen with the KPI cards on the top. If that's what you wanted, you could make it work another way. You could have the KPI cards and the chart panel together and just have a map on another screen. That's just the way that I've designed it. So you can see that there's much more that you can do with VertiGIS Studio Web, and I haven't even had time to look at 3D yet. I noticed I've taken nearly half an hour. So with that, I'll switch back to my default layout, and I'll pop up my last slide, which is any questions from the audience at this point in time. If you've got them but you don't want to ask them, you can email us at vertigisstudio@onespatial.com. Charlotte, do we have any?
Yes, you do. So the first one is, how does VertiGIS Studio Analytics compare to ArcGIS Monitor?
Okay, so VertiGIS Studio Analytics, the power of analytics over ArcGIS Monitor is that ArcGIS Monitor monitors the ArcGIS estate, as it says, but the VertiGIS will extend across your databases, so be it Oracle, SQL Server, Postgres. It'll analyze the queries and ensure that they are running optimally, and it does a lot of work with CPUs, so different machine CPUs, disk I/O, understanding disk input output, also understanding the ArcGIS server REST endpoints, how they're performing, but the VertiGIS Studio applications, experience builder applications, who's using them, what are they using when they're using those applications, and how long are they spending in using those applications. So it sort of extends what ArcGIS Monitor does. ArcGIS Monitor monitors what it does, but the VertiGIS Studio one, it extends and allows you to look at more options. I hope that answers your question.
Yep, then we've got a couple more. So is there a roadmap to get to 100% parity of VertiGIS Studio Web and the old HTML5 viewer?
There is a roadmap, and I can share it. I don't believe there will ever be 100% parity, because there are a couple of items that you just can't do in the new world. And then, for example, collaboration. There isn't a collaboration tool, but what they've done is they've done it in a different way. So they use VertiGIS Studio Web and Microsoft Teams to do collaboration rather than having a specific collaboration tool. So there might not be a one-to-one, but what there will be is, here's what it was, this is what it does now. And they're very, very close. They're about 96% of the way there now to be feature parity, but I can certainly get the latest roadmap to see where we're going. And there is also a more detailed list. I showed in my presentation a list of what's in the HTML, what's in Essentials, what's in web. There's also a detailed list that breaks it down even more, which I can probably share as well.
Brilliant. Okay, we've got a few more questions coming, so I hope you can get through these quickly.
Yeah.
Have you got any advice on migrating project files?
Yeah, that's a bit difficult at the moment. That's one of the areas they're looking into now. There are some ways we can do this, and there are some steps we can do to do this, but the project files don't come across without a little bit of effort. But that's certainly something you should come and email us, and we can talk to you about. But there is a way of doing it. VertiGIS Studio Web does have projects, but it's done in a different way. But we are pressing VertiGIS to get a better tool for migrating projects. That's a very, very good question. Thank you for that.
No, right. Another one, can we configure more than one map in Portal and then have the user to select any of those from a single VertiGIS Studio web app?
Yeah, so what you can do, there's a layer selection, and you can basically just select what sort of base maps you want, what sort of foreground maps you want. So yeah, it's almost like a layer catalog that was in the HTML5 viewer. You can build that sort of thing up, and they do it via tags in Portal.
Brilliant. And then we have, sorry Sam, I'm not sure if this is a question or a statement, but I'm just going to read it. Really useful advice from Chris when Transport for Wales started our Geocortex VertiGIS journey 3 years ago to build all our workflows and report/print templates in VertiGIS Studio whilst consuming within GVH. So now all we have to do is migrate our apps to VertiGIS Web. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so I think it's just actually a thanks.
Yes,
really well done.
Yes, that's a very good point actually. So as was mentioned there, if you are thinking of building any workflows now, build them in the new workflow 5 because they just migrate straight over. You just include them into your apps. And one of the things you can do right now is to start rewriting your workflows. They will work in HTML5 as is. You just need to rewrite them. And then when you get your new app, you just load it into the new web app that you've created. So thanks for that. Yeah.
Perfect. And that's all the questions we have.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time. I hope you found it useful. And as I say, if you do want to talk some more, please feel free to get in touch.